Hi, it's Norman Kochannek here from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochannek. Now, once again, I'm joined by the esteemed Chris Vernon from blistery, windy, wet, cold. Is it Kent?
Kent, that's it. Yeah, it's actually a quiet, overcast day today. We had a big storm in the week, and it might snow tomorrow. So, yeah, we're having a fairly mixed bag with the weather at the moment. But what can we do? It's England in winter.
All right, that's I didn't expect anything different actually, Chris. I thought it would be of that type anyway. All right, so look, today we've got a fairly packed program. We have a lot of interaction with our viewers. In fact, that's growing, and I'm very happy with the number of people that are contacting me and making it clear that they're watching and looking forward to these episodes. In fact, this is episode 5, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
Episode 5 of an Aussie and a POM talking about India and now beyond, because obviously there's different series starting. The India-Australia series is now well and truly, well, I would argue, put to bed, although fans in India don't think that way. I actually interviewed a lot of Australian people today, and they, again, we're very proud of India, so it's a very impressive story. We've got a few things on our agenda today, and Chris is actually, before we start, Chris, what do you got behind you? You got what appears to be a run sheet or a scoreboard.
It's just a big bit of plywood, but yeah, it's got our current, after our discussion, it's got our current test team. And I think from what we've discussed, we've got numbers 6, 7, and 8, which I think will cause a good discussion today with us and the fans watching. So yeah, and then I've got plenty of room if we then go on to our all-time test 11, then we can put them next to and compare, and plenty of scope to do lots of stuff with it.
We might both sign at the end of the series and auction off about $5, £5.
Yeah.
If
I'll
you're
try and
lucky.
leave that there. They might fall over.
All right. As far as today is concerned, we are going to talk once again about, of course, the series between Sri Lanka and England, which is into its second test at Gaul, and has been quite a good result so far for Sri Lanka, in particular Angela Matthews with a century, and looked particularly good winning the toss. Thankfully for them, I think it helped them out a lot. Although they did bat first in the first test, thinking that it'd be with an advantageous position, roll out for 135. So that didn't happen the first time. The second thing we'll be talking about is we'll be touching on the IPL, the Indian Premier League, as you would know it. I actually jokingly called it the Dubai Premier League or the Abu Dhabi Premier League, because the last time they played it, they didn't play it in India, actually, did they? So due to COVID. And there was some issues around Steve Smith and Glenn Maxwell, which Chris will bring up, and apparently got released by their franchises, which I think is an interesting point, and we'll find out exactly why that happened, perhaps. And also on the Indian crown you were talking about, what was that about, Chris? I didn't talk about that.
The Indian crown, sorry, in what respect, sorry?
Well, you've put Indian crowd, maybe you meant Indian crowd.
Oh, yeah, no, I just, I think with the IPL, it's something that I've started looking into a little bit this week, and I haven't done lots of research, but I saw that a couple of the Australians, Maxwell and Smith, which I think was a surprise, got released by the Royals, Steve Smith, and I just wondered, and I don't know this, and it'd be interesting to see what the viewers think, but do you think that what has happened recently with the Rishabh Pant and the guard scratching, do you think that the decision to release arguably the greatest batsman in the world at the moment, I know that the Virat Kohli fans would disagree, but he's up there, he's certainly in the argument, and he was captain of the Royals last year as well, wasn't he? So
remarkable.
Do you think that has anything to do with their decision, or is it a monetary decision and they feel that Sanju Samson, who's been appointed as captain, is going to do a better job and they can... Told you my board would fall over. Yeah, just interesting to see what the people that are home and from the Indian sort of viewers, I guess that they're closer to the source and might have some news that we might not have heard of, if that makes sense.
It certainly does. Now, again, I can't emphasize enough to you all as viewers that we need you to be able to interact with us as much as you want, as freely as you want. We both have Twitter handles. We obviously have on the posts on the YouTube channel, you'll be able to talk to us that way as well. But certainly my Twitter handle is @normkoch, as @NORMKOCH, and yours is @VERN158. Is that correct?
Yes, Vern158, yeah.
So please join us on Twitter. If you're not, it's a great platform. It's very easy. It's very accessible. It's the highest hit on a Google search as well. So we get to you very quickly that way. So again, Norman Kochannek, which is me, at Norm Koch or Chris at Vern, as in VERN 158. Now, the third part of our discussion today will be around the numbers, the batting numbers, which is that ball that fell over before behind Chris.
Yep.
Obviously, we don't spare any expense about the technology here. Chris has gone to great expense, probably from his local tip for that ball. I'm not sure, but it looks like
we had it in the garage, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't even bought it, so I've gone all out.
You could have made out you bought it for the viewers, but okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so that's the batting position 6, 7, and 8, which is, I tell you what, the way India's been playing lately, they have a bucket of 6, 7, 8s that could be very relevant there, which is very much the case. And that could be a 6, 7, 8 position in a test side, so not a one-day or ODI, as in T20. No, it's specifically test. And I guess it's the fourth point. We have a question from a viewer over the BBL, the Big Bash, and Chris will bring it up as well. But I wanted to, before we start, I wanted to give a little shout out to one of our viewers who made an extra special effort to be a part of this program today. And she is actually in Assam in India, and it's Nilakshi Sharma. Well, not Nilakshi Sharma, so let me get this right. I'll make sure I've got the name right. It is, in fact, Nilakshi Sharma. Hello to Nilakshi. She made a special shout out. In fact, she's rather wanting to meet Chris, so say hello to Nilakshi, Chris.
Hello. Nice of you to get in touch.
And she showed interest in meeting and being a part of it. And I might consider having a fan get in front of the screens on occasion. So we might make a little contest up to allow fans from we might get different states within India, for example, Assam or Gujarat or, various other, Maharashtra. We can get the different states and we can get a representative. If you are quick enough to get to us on Twitter or our YouTube questioning area, please, what we want representatives from those different states, can be male or female. I think we've got the Assam person already sorted. Nilakshi Sharma will be the representative there, but let me hear from you, myself and Chris, and we'll be able to get that sorted. So please, that's a great part of the talk, is actually have interaction, and we can get you onto our Skype and link you in, and Bob's your uncle. You're a part of the talk. So back to the first point, Chris. We were going to talk about the current Sri Lankan and England test match, the second test match. Of course, England won the first. What's your thoughts so far in the play? We're into the second day now.
Yeah, so live score, Sri Lanka, we've got 381, which I think probably in the subcontinent in Sri Lanka, I think you'd always want 400, but I think any time in a test match you can get 350 on the board. It's a competitive score. Angelo Matthews got 100. I mean, he's Mr. Reliable, really, isn't he? I would guess that every time he scores a very important runs for Sri Lanka, doesn't he? Especially in quite an inexperienced lineup still. So interesting fact that, and the Australians will be pleased to hear this, that Angelo Matthews actually handed an unwanted record back to Alan Border for the most test 50s at a ground without scoring 100. So Angelo Matthews had 11 50s at Gaul before now scoring his 100, and Alan Border at Sydney has 11 and never scored 100, which was his home ground too, I believe, Alan Border. So a fairly unwanted record for Mr. Border, I would say there.
It certainly is, but Alan Border would probably claim Queensland to be his home now. He went up there, as did Jeff Thompson, having both been Sydneyites. I also know Naroshan Dickwella, who I know personally, frustratingly was out for 92. The boy can't score a century at test level. He scored in one-day matches, but at test level, I think this will be fifth. I think it's his 16th, 50th. Yeah. And he is somebody who is a capable opening bat, to be honest with you. He is the keeper, and got out for 92, which is very frustrating. I'm sure he was very disappointed. I noticed Dinesh Chandimal, another ex-keeper, he was 52. And I mean, and also Daruan Pereira, who was mainly a bowler, bowling around at best, and he got 67. So they're all out for 381. That's pretty commendable. It's going to make it difficult for England to have the same luxury of success as they did in the first test. And I'm noticing now that they're currently some 2 for 69, having lost, looks like both openers, Sibley and Crawley, for very poor scores. In fact, Crawley got 5 and Sibley got a duck. But good old Johnny Bairstow's there on 22, and ever-reliable Joe Root, who we kind of got that ball at the back, didn't we, with Williamson, is on 40. So we've got a lot of interaction with the squad. In fact, we're both Chris and I realised today we both know Simon Willis, who has had a lot to do with both Sri Lanka and England of late. from a coaching perspective, and we may have him on in a future show to bring his perspective and have a great position, having dealt with both of these teams at some stage. Certainly, and the likes of Monty Panesar, Kritika Naidu, and also Harini Rana are coming up on future episodes regarding this whole mix as we transition from Sri Lanka, England to England and India as a matter of a week or so away. What's your take on this match?
I'd just like to bring up, I think, first and foremost, I don't know if you've seen the full scorecard, James Anderson.
Yes.
6 for 40, I think, is fine off 24 overs, which I get a lot of comments and a lot of people seem to, and I'm going to be slightly controversial here because it's something I do believe quite strongly in, that James Anderson can only do it in England, and it's just lies, it's just false. I've got his stats here for test matches in Asia, so not just India and Sri Lanka, but Asia, 66 wickets at under 29 in Asia. He's got a better average in Asia than Kapil Dev as a seam bowler.
Wow.
And I heard that on Sky Sports, the cricket, so I'm sure that will be fact-checked by the people watching, but the argument is that he's just better in England. But I mean, his last 50 tests, he's got 190 wickets at 21 for a guy who's apparently only good in England, which, and I think that he's brilliant in England. He averages 23 in tests in England. And of course, most bowlers are going to be better batters as well in the country that you're brought up and used to. But the sort of the idea that he is not good overseas is just false. And as you see, a better average in Asia than Kapil Dev, and who's possibly regarded as the best seamer ever, maybe apart from Imran Khan in Asia, but certainly one of the greatest seamers of all time, let alone of the from the subcontinent.
So you're trying to tell me that James Anderson should change his name to James Khan or something, or is that what you're trying to tell me?
I'm not. I'm just saying that I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism. One of the comments we had last week was that if it doesn't swing, then James Anderson is useless, and it's just not true. He's clearly still right at the peak of his powers, and I think that coming up with the Test series in India, I think that he poses a real threat, regardless of if it swings or not.
Well, you predicted it that Broad would be in the first, and then Yin and Yang, they'd swapped them around. And in fact, they brought Anderson and taken Broad out, resting him. Obviously, with their eye on India. Yeah. But James, 6 for 40. How old is he now? Is he 40?
He's 38, sure. I believe. He's 38. And he says he's never felt fitter, never felt better. So I think it poses a bit of a problem. If you take out Mark Wood bowled well in this test, but he isn't.
Mark Wood's got 3 wickets. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not the fittest. He's always struggled with injury, and I think that their plan with they've got 17 Test matches this year, England, which is a crazy amount. I think that they'd want to manage the two of them, but Broad and Anderson at the moment in current form are 2 of the best in the world, and you're going for a massive Test series in India. I think that they'd want to play both of them if they can, but I don't know how you get them both in the side. So it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think they want to play Jofra Archer, as he's different and he's the X factor. But if you want to play 2 or 3 spinners, then I don't know if you can get Anderson and Broad in the same team.
So you're suggesting that the first Test in India, which is at, if I'm not wrong, Chennai, which is
first 2 in Chennai, second 2 are in Ahmedabad, I believe.
Ahmedabad, yeah. But the one in Chennai, well, that's more of a spinning wicket, I think, notoriously. I'm not sure. I believe it is. But it's going to be interesting. So you're saying you think James Anderson and Broad won't be in the same unit?
I don't think that they would plan them to be in the same unit. I think that they're, with 17 tests, this year, I think that they would plan to rotate them in and out like they've done in this test. I think it'll be, They'll play 2 each in India. And I think they'll just swap. I think that's the one slot they've got there. Obviously, in England, you have to pick both. They're in English conditions, they're probably the 2 best in the world. I don't think anyone can argue with that. It'd just be interesting to see what they do at this selection, because I think they'll want to play Moeen Ali. I think they'll want to bring him in. Jofra Archer will play. And of course, Ben Stokes coming back in. He offers you a seam bowling option as one of your best batters. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. We'll discuss it after this test, what we think team selection should be, and I'll have a look. But yeah, they're just all my point was that I think he gets some unfair criticism, Anderson, when his stats are, he does back it up, especially in the subcontinent, that he is effective.
Well, that's quite an outrageous bowling performance at Gaul, 6 for 40. I would never have dreamed that, but I wouldn't have never dreamed India beating Australia the way they did. So it's all a bit of COVID environment. We're a bit numb to all this. Who knows what's going to happen next?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, despite his 6 wickets, the actual score of 381 by Sri Lanka is pretty damn good. Yeah. And yet again, Karunaratne's not on the side, so they're without their captain. I kind of thought he was back for this test, but it appears obviously that he hasn't been selected. So they've still got lots of depth there with Chandimal and Angelo Matthews. And I predict England will struggle a little bit here. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but they're going to struggle because, I mean, obviously Root seems to love this ground. He got 200 odd in the first innings in one of his innings. Yeah. So we'll see how he goes. Any other thoughts on this match? So we're into the... Go ahead.
It just comes down to our first innings. If we can be par or maybe get a lead, then I think we've got a good chance. I think that the pitch looks pretty flat. It was pretty up, but neither of our spinners took a wicket. Mbaldini has taken 2 wickets, but he's now taken both openers. I think that was 8. He's got them both out 3 times each for combined 10 runs or something stupid in 2 tests now. So he's obviously got a bit of the wood over them. It comes down to our first innings. If we can get 400, 450, you never know. If we 220 all out, then I think it's test match over. But it's good. It's good to see a better match, a better, more competitive match.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just unfortunate. Yet again, a bit of a aberration, as we talked about with India with their 36. I think the 135 that Sri Lanka got in the first test was also a bit of an aberration. They've proven they can bat pretty well. Angelo Matthews, look, he's got 6,000 plus test runs. The guy can certainly, and he bowls too, and he has captain. Pretty much one of the better players. And I think in a world sense, he's very underrated still, even to this day. If you talk about this so-called 6, 7, 8 position, you wouldn't necessarily think of Matthews, but he should be in the mix. He's done pretty well in his career. Yeah. Okay. Any last thoughts about that match? We're still in the balance. We'll probably have a lot more to talk about as it gets closer to the end, but we might do that tomorrow or the day after. So interesting. All right. That's our snapshot on the Sri Lanka-England match, which is certainly going to be a close one. Look, it just tells me it's likely to be a 5-day test match, which I think is fantastic. I'm so happy the tests are now going the full 5 days. I was getting particularly nervous when a number of test matches were running into a 3rd, 4th day when they were ending, which I couldn't quite work out why that was happening. I don't think it was based on a bowler-friendly wicket either. It was just poor batting, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the next point then, which is around the IPL discussion that we brought up earlier about the likes of Steve Smith and Glenn Maxwell. Chris.
It was just an interesting, as I said, the IPL has just finished in Dubai, and there still is uncertainty about if it will be in India this year, because it's often Easter, isn't it? So April, May time. So it's not imminent, but it's certainly coming up, and I think the auction is next month. I think the auction's in February. It was just, and I think it's a real point of we can interact with our Indian, the guys in India, I think, because they'll know probably more than we do, being closer to the source of the news, really. They'll obviously be first to know about everything. And it's just an interesting, do the viewers think that Steve Smith being released by the Rajasthan Royals has anything to do with the controversy at Sydney in the Test match series just gone?
The Scratchgate, we'll call it.
Yes.
Look, I'm interested too, because I covered that quite intensely during the Sydney Test. I was covering the likes of Sports Today, India Today, even Extra Time, and even ABP News. They're all very much keen to find out what was going on. It was actually a bigger deal in India than it was in Australia, because even the likes of Pant and Rahane and even Shafti were saying post-media match conference, they were saying we didn't even know something was wrong. Yeah. So I find it a bit hard to believe, but they played it down a fair bit. But clearly, Steve Smith shouldn't have done it. It wasn't necessarily cheating as such, but certainly was not necessary. They try to blame his idiosyncrasies of what he does in his own little world, as Ian Chappell made very clear on ABC Radio in Australia. The reality is he shouldn't have done it. He has to be a bit of an idiot if he thinks it's something that you should do. You could argue with making too much of a deal of it, but he's in such a tentative position with what happened in South Africa. It's so glaringly there. We're watching every move he makes. Realistically, he shouldn't have done it. But I did laugh when I saw Rohit Sharma jokingly doing the same thing. Did you see that? When he more mocked the situation. But that just shows the strength of Indian character.
I think the conversation for me is we slightly disagree on it, Norman. I think we've made that clear about what we if we see it as cheating or not. I think if Steve Smith or Tim Payne had just come out and said, look, I probably shouldn't have done it. I was just trying to maybe put Pant off a little bit. I was trying to take a wicket in a massive match. I think people wouldn't have had the same. I don't think it would have been as big a deal. The fact that they've come out and tried to say, oh, he didn't know he was doing it. I mean, come on, we're not stupid. So I think that's almost the lies or the trying to pull the wool over our eyes as viewers, I think makes it slightly worse, if that makes sense. And we've all been there. I've played cricket. We've all done stuff to try and put a batsman off, to try and take a wicket. And I think that's all Smith was doing. I don't think it's cheating. Was it in the spirit of the game? I think it's a grey area. But I'm sure he did it on purpose. I don't think that's up. I don't think that's any debate there.
No, absolutely. The reality is, if it affected the IPL decision when it was released on that basis, look, honestly, the way that this whole season or two has gone from COVID to the quarantine to the uncertainty about games, there could be a number of factors here.
Yeah.
But you're right. The fact that the IPL must be suffering somewhat financially, still a wonderfully successful tournament. And if they were paying too much for Steve Smith and they had Samson there at a lesser price but equally as good, they could have gone for it. It could be an economic decision rather than anything else. But whether we find the truth out, maybe our Indian viewers or our general viewers across the world can inform us as to what that is. So please make the effort to go to our Twitter handles at Norm Koch and at Vern158. Sign up to us, let us know, make us aware of what you think there, because it's a bit intriguing, I must admit. And it's at the forefront of our minds, the IPL and even the likes of other tours coming up. Anything else on that, Chris, did you want to?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just an interesting talking point. Obviously, you've got the best Test match player of the decade. He was captain as well of the Royals. So for them to then release him, something doesn't seem right. And it might just be a financial decision. But you see, I don't even think he was one of the most expensive, compared to some of the Indian homegrown guys. And Pat Cummins was obviously the most expensive. The most expensive player ever, overseas player ever in the IPL. It just was an odd one. I just caught my eye, and it'll be interesting to see this year what happens in the auction. Maxwell got released, but there are some good English guys. One of them currently setting the BBL on fire. Alex Hales, who's been exiled from English duty. Really, he's had a few little indiscretions, to quote Billy Birmingham, over the past. But I think he's leading run scorer in the BBL. He certainly was yesterday, and for the guy to not even be considered in the one day or the T20 side for England is staggering. Really shows how good we've been at the moment. But I'd like to see him get an IPL contract. I think that any side would be a better team with him in it for sure.
But he's not unlike a Glenn Maxwell to us, to be honest with you. You would argue many people talk to me about him being in our Test squad and our various squads at an Australian level, but always seems to be in and out. And at IPL, he's been a long-term. He was there from the start virtually and has not stopped. So they're kind of similar in terms of their show pony thoughts and bringing in a crowd, which generally is the case, but not this time. Okay, all right. Let's move to what's behind you.
Yep.
Have you got anything else about the IPL? Are you happy with that?
No, I think so. I think that it'd be a good thing that we can bring in if it's going to happen Easter. I do a lot of the fantasy IPL with a few of my friends. It's Dream 11, I think it's called, the app, and it will be good as and when, if we've got some viewers who do it as well, we can maybe set a league up, or we can I'm happy to get stuck in with some of the guys in India and see how we fare against each other. I think that'd be brilliant.
Well, that's Chris's. He'll take charge of that. We'll give Chris the IPL crown.
I'm not very good.
Again, please.
I'm a Royal Challengers. I like the Royal Challengers. There we go. I like AB de Villiers and Bangalore. That's my team.
Well, they've got Mohammad Siraj still, have they?
I think so. Yeah. They've always last couple of years they've struggled a bit with the bowling, I think, but they've got Chalal. Interesting to see if he plays in the Test series against England. But I've always been a big fan of AB de Villiers, and they had McCullum there and Gale there. So I like watching them.
Yeah, a bit of pizzazz about that team for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, now we'll move to the third section, which is about this so-called Test team of the world. And we've gone through the first 5 now. My eyes are pretty good, but they're not that good. I'll read Dave Warner, Dean Elgar, Kane Williamson, And you've got Joe Root there on the side because you're English, so we're going to put him in somewhere, I guess. I'm not that excited about him. Then you've got 4, you've got, of course, Virat Kohli.
Yep.
And 5, Steve Smith. Not a bad batting line, although the Indian B team may have beat them with that. Their top 5.
I'm happy to go. I'm happy to do this just to please everyone. I think that we can put the captain's signal next to Kohli as well, if everyone's happy. If you're happy with that, Norman, as well. I'm
happy with that.
Fine.
And I mean, if he's not available, if his wife has another child, we can always bring Rahane in, can't we?
I'd be keen to give the captaincy to Williamson. If not, I think he's been. I think he's a very fine captain and player.
But look, just on that point of captaincy, now I'll make this really clear. There's a lot of discussion going on in Australia about, or more so even India. This Buri Majunda from Sports Today made this comment very strongly. There's like a certain wave of anti-Virat for captaincy going on, which is absolute bollocks, absolute rubbish, because the man has brought India to the point where they were leading up to that series after having won 18. The whole culture of the team with Shastri as coach has come about because of those two gentlemen. Even though Rahane is incredibly good at being a captain, the reality is Kohli's brought that wave of confidence and fearlessness to the team and deserves to stay there. Despite the fact that Rahane is a good foil, it is Virat Kohli's domain, so he's not going anywhere. Although Rahane is a good yin and yang for him, and there's no issue. When Virat Kohli's the new wave of aggressive captaincy and fear nothing. So that's what we've got. All right. So number 6, 7, and 8. Now, what are we looking at in terms of positions in the order? There's a keeper amongst them.
Number 7, I've got keepers. 7's our keeper. 8 is our first sort of bowling all-rounder, and 6 I've sort of penciled as sort of a batter/batting all-rounder, if that makes sense.
So you're looking at potentially, you could almost argue there are 3 all-rounder positions: a batting all-rounder, a keeper all-rounder, as in batting, and obviously then the bowling. Okay, this is going to open up. Oh my God. I'm already
big debates, I think, for 7 and 8. I think that number 6 is I don't think that there's one candidate for number 6 in the world, and I don't think anyone else comes close, and it's Ben Stokes.
Coming from an Englishman, I expect that.
But I mean, feel free to.
I agree.
Any guy he's batting wise is. He average, his batting has come up and up and up, and he's a big game player. With bat and ball, and I think that look at Headingley last year in the World Cup final. I just don't. I had a think because I want it to be in for number 7, 8. I've got 3 or 4 candidates for each, but I really don't think that there is anyone else in the world at the moment that even the most biased of Australian or Indian fan could argue that he doesn't deserve that spot in that side.
If it was picked on, okay, I'm totally in agreement. I'll make this clear. I'm in total agreement with you. I'm not denying that he should be the person at number 6.
Yeah.
If there's anything slightly concerning for me, because of COVID, he's gone quiet, as all players have. We haven't yet. We'll probably see the wares of him because he's not in the Sri Lankan series, which concerns me. Was that because he was injured, or was it just simply a form of rotation or rest? What was that about?
I think he had a rest. I think that. I'm fairly sure his dad died over the winter or recently, and he obviously had an IPL. He played in the IPL, so I think they're just managing workload, and maybe he wasn't quite ready to come back. It's nothing more than a rest rotation. He's the last person in that side that's going to get dropped. So I think it was just a combination of factors. Same as Archer. Archer played in the IPL as well and bowled a lot of overs last year, and there's a lot of Test cricket for England. So this year, but in terms of first name on a team sheet, Stokes is there, isn't he?
Okay. All right. I agree with that. I'll put Ben Stokes down as my number 6. And you're very presumptuous there. You don't do it now. Are you supposed to be penciling in the name while we're talking, Chris? Not have that presumption.
I just wrote it down. I've got my pen and my bits of paper here, so I've come prepared.
So you haven't prepared 7 and 8, but you prepared 6.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Because I think 7 and 8 is a slightly more of a debate, and I think we might disagree on a couple of things with number 7 and 8.
If you have to pick a number 7, which we're talking about, a wicketkeeper today, in light of the Australia-India series, I know there's keeping techniques and keeping capabilities which comes into play. I get that, but my gosh, Rishabh Pant.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Look, people knock his keeping. I reckon they're being really harsh because he's not a bad keeper.
Mm.
He may drop the catch, but geez, Tim Payne dropped the truckload as well. So I would argue Rishabh Pant has to be a command in this position if it's selected to today. I mean, he's outstanding. He's batting, of course, a la Adam Gilchrist, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the, I mean, I know Josh Butlers can certainly bat, and, the Ben Stokes, as you keep talking about. But I would argue, and even Johnny Besso, but he's not batting in that position anymore. Look, Rishabh Pant, I'd just his presence on that fifth day, the way he talks when he's keeping is so enlightening, even though it's cheeky. I've got a big rap on him as a person too. He's so loved. So I would have him at number 7 without a shadow of a doubt. Who else did you think?
I had 4 candidates here. I had Josh Buttler, who I don't think, I wouldn't have him, but he's a name to talk about, as we discussed. I think an underrated option is BJ Watling from New Zealand. I think that he's scored a lot of important runs. But my candidate, and he's the guy that I would have, is Quinton de Kock. I think that he's consistently been the new sort of Adam Gilchrist. He's aggressive. He's a brilliant keeper. If we're talking about a wicket-keeping slot purely, he's streets ahead of Rishabh Pant in just with the gloves. And the batting is... I think that Pant has potential to be there, and if we have this conversation in a year or 2 years' time, I'm certainly open to Pant having a kick, kicking on with his career. But I think for the last 2 or 3 years, who has been the guy who's been the best all-round keeper bat in the world in all formats, really, not just Test cricket. I think it has to be de Kock for me.
The only thing is, he's batted a lot in the opening position, hasn't he? Even at Test level, he batted a bit.
A few times. I think that I'm not sure how many times he's opened the batting, but Quinton de Kock, 5 Test hundreds, averaging 39 over 50 tests. Rishabh Pant averages 43 over 16 tests with 200. So they're fairly similar. I would argue that de Kock has more tricky. South African wickets can be harder to play on, just from a seamer point of view. So it'll be interesting to see how Pant goes in South Africa as and when he gets there. He got 100 in England, Rishabh Pant, but that was on a very flat wicket at the Oval, if I remember. And he's batted well in Australia. I guess my point is that I think it's a close one between the two. I think that current form, Pant has had a brilliant last 2 or 3 months, but consistently over the last 4 or 5 years, I think that Quinton de Kock would get the nod for me.
Okay. I'm still favouring Pant because of the currency of his performance. The other thing is, how many games has Quinton de Kock won in terms of his performance? Other than his catches, I don't recollect de Kock, taking on the last, part of the last day, taking the scruff of the neck, winning the match, which Adam Gilchrist certainly has done, and now Pant clearly has done. That to me is a factor about a keeper. They go in such a critical position at 7, and they are with the tail very often, that it can be a match turner if they do well. That's my question about Quinton. I don't know. I can't recollect any time where he actually won a match, whereas Pant started it yet again only as recently as last week, and is probably one that you would expect to be more likely to do that. If you had to choose, they're both sitting there on the bench, and you had to pull one out of the two to do that, who would you pick?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think that Pant has the ability to change a match quicker, although Quinton de Kock is an aggressive as well. I think that... But as an opener, I don't think I've ever seen Quinton bat that way at number 7 where he changed the match. Opener, he's a dasher and he can be very explosive, but that's opening, which I actually think is an easier position to bat in than number 7. Why? Because an opener, free-minded, new ball, plenty of boundary, plenty of room to move with your shots. Number 7, you can be 5 wickets down in the panic with the tail to go. There's a lot more pressure on that batting performance to play aggressively. So I think he's done it more as an opener, not at that position. I can't remember a position time when he actually turned around like that. So I'm penciling in Pant just in front of de Kock based on the fact of the currency of the position. But I could argue they're both there. Is that a fair summation? I'll do the same as I did for Kane Williamson. I'll put
other way around.
Pant first because he's probably favourite, but de Kock is a worthy. I think that de Kock, is comfortably a better keeper, though. I think that he's by far the best gloveman in the world. To be fair, I think even the Indian fans would suggest that Pant probably isn't the best keeper. I think that
Saha's
is
a much
probably
better
a better
keeper.
keeper. Yeah. So both great players.
But can you
Okay.
imagine Saha batting on the last day with a session to go?
Oh no, absolutely.
And he
It's
wouldn't have done it. Wouldn't have done
Pant
it.
for sure. For sure.
All right. Well, I can agree with that. We'll see with the viewers. They might have a different opinion, but that's what I would think.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So that's 7.
You got your sticky glue there, or what are you using?
Yeah. White tack.
White tack. Okay.
Sticky tack, is it in Australia? There's number 7. He's in.
Okay. All right. We're
8.
down to number 8. Now, this is where I would argue this is probably the more difficult one. I'm going to say Pat Cummins would be.
I had 4. I put 4. I did some research and I did some thinking this morning. I've got 4 names.
Go ahead.
Pat Cummins is one of them, for sure, without a doubt. I think that Pat Cummins gets in the side. It's just where does he bat? Is he a number 8 or number 9? The other 2, I've got 2 Indians there. I've got Ashwin and Jadeja. I'm only going to want to put 1 in. Yeah. I think that, do you want a seam all-rounder 8 or a spinning all-rounder 8? The other name who was number 1 all-rounder in the world for a while before Stokes got it is Jason Holder. I think that he's got a Test match 100 against England. He carries that side. You know, they're very poor side at the moment, the West Indies.
Well, I've got a fellow English colleague called Jotty Birdie, who probably doesn't live that very far from you. She's in the journalist world of England. She's extremely close to Jason Holder, and if she was listening right now, she'd be jumping out of her skin because she's a big fan of Jason. So
I think that he averages 32 in Test cricket, 3 Test hundreds. In bowling stats wise, let me just see if I can load them up quickly. 116 wickets at 28. And for playing on West Indies wickets it's similar to the Brian Lara argument we had. Playing in a very poor side, he's been the shining light really, and I think that he's certainly underrated. I don't think he gets in my side over Cummings or Ashwin, but I think he's certainly worth discussing as a worthy place, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you look, I shouldn't say it's a cop out. It's not a cop out, but we might begrudgingly slide Cummings down to 9 on what you're telling me, which means he won't be considered for number 8. I would agree to disagree, but agree to leave him at number 9. Yeah. And we'd go back to Jadeja / Ashwin. Jason Holder's also a captain and I think he still is current captain, isn't he? Or Darren Brown? That's the other difficulty. He's such an important part of that West Indian side because he's captain, bats, bowls, does everything. Inspirational player that he is. But with Ben Stokes in it, you can't get both of them in there, in my opinion. Yeah. So I would not have him in the side, not because he's not good enough, but I would not have him in the side. Yeah. I would have Cummins at 9, which is another discussion point. And I would argue, you've hit the nail on the head. This is a really hard one. Ashwin / Jadeja or Jadeja / Ashwin. We wouldn't leave one out if it was an Indian side, but because of Ben Stokes' presence and Pant, I would argue you'd have to say number 8 would be Ashwin / Jadeja. I
think in India, I would go Ashwin. I think as a general cricket side, with what Jadeja brings, he's gutsy, he's in-your-face type cricketer. He's one of the best fielders in the world. He can bat, and he's a left armer. I think that it adds so much difference. He's a controlling bowler. I think you get a lot of spinners who go for a lot of runs, and Ashwin has done that. His record in England and abroad. I know he bowled well in Australia this time, but certainly wasn't great. I think he got dropped for a series in England, and they played Jadeja. So I think in India, Ashwin's obviously a brilliant, subcontinent, but I know he can bat. I know he's got Test hundreds. I just think from what contributes to the side, I think Jadeja is I think that he just pips it as a general. If you're going for an all-round, for a player on any surface, I think Jadeja is a better all-round option than Ashwin, if that makes sense.
So if you're Ravi Shastri and you had one position in the team for whatever reason, and you had to pick between Jadeja and Ashwin, you're saying they would pick based on location between the two?
I don't know. I think that it's tricky. Do I just want Ashwin as my only? Would I want Jadeja as my only spinner? And it's a tricky one. If you're going for just a frontline spinner, then Ashwin probably gets it. It's tricky. Yeah. I said it's a good debate. I'm trying to if there are any other spinners. I mean, there's
let's
plenty
get our thinking hats on, guys, out there in viewership
Mitch
world.
Santner is a decent.
Who?
Mitch Santner for New Zealand, but
no.
But no, as a candidate for that role, I wouldn't have him in, and I didn't have him up. But he's another. He's
a good player, but I don't think he's in the same league. Look, I would say Ashwin / Jadeja, and we'll make a decision that way, purely because Ashwin starts with A and J follows. So we'll go with that.
Okay.
That's a diplomatic way. Jason Holder, although he's certainly inspirational, first one picked in a West Indian side. I don't think he'd make the side, unfortunately. Maybe floating around outside the team he might be, and Cummins, by force of numbers and players, and Ben Stokes' position, made him go to 9. But we'll leave him in our next discussion, which is 9, 10, 11.
We're gonna have some arguments next time. I think 9, 10, 11. I think there's a lot.
Oh, I'd bring Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne.
Current playing. I'm
just joking, of course. All right, that's our good 6, 7, 8. So we've agreed on Stokes.
We need to. I think what we'll do is we can have these strokes, but I think at the end when we have our full 11, we're going to have to make a decision on all of them. I think
get our viewers to help.
We've got to finalise.
So your job is to post this list on the YouTube video when we upload it. If you can just put it on the commentary below. But 6 at this stage is definitely Pant.
7, yeah.
Sorry, 7. Sorry, 6 is whoever.
Stokes.
7 Pant, and 8 Ashwin / Jadeja.
Yeah.
Right. And interesting. We'll come in later. We'll talk about him.
Interesting for our next discussion. Just people watching, send us your thoughts. Who you would consider for the 9, 10, 11 role? I mean, there's probably 10 fast bowlers that could all get it in. You've got Broad, Anderson, Southey, Bolt, Bumrah, Hazelwood, Cummings, Rabada. There's so many proper, very good fast bowlers. So yeah, just in the comments, just let us know what you think, and we're going to debate it heatedly, I would suspect, next time around.
I mean, and I know this is too early to say, but Cummins, player of the series for this series, which was a little bit interesting that he got that number 1 fast bowler in the world at the moment, would be a hard one to knock out. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that was 6 Stokes, 7 Punts, and 8 a slash between Ashwin or Jadeja. Okay. Yeah. All right. That sounds like a pretty good summary to me. So tomorrow, I've got a whole host of people that could be on. I could have the likes of Monty Panesar talking about the England-Sri Lankan series, Simon Willis, who's been involved with coaching roles with both camps, and even coached Chris here as well, correct?
Yeah, one of my early Kent coaches, yeah.
So for Kent, County Kent, that you played for, what level did you reach for Kent?
I played up to second 11 standard, so I was, I don't think I was ever close to the first 11, but I played the age group stuff and the county academy stuff and the second 11, up to second 11.
And did I get you out when I played against you? I can't remember who played.
No, you didn't.
Remember that time when I was batting and I fell over? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah, it was amusing. Yeah, you definitely didn't get me out.
Thank God it wasn't on video. Jesus. All right, so that's what we'll finish it with today. So again, Monty Panesar, Simon Willis, obviously Chris will be here with us as well. The likes of Kritika Naidu, they've got Harini Rana, the 2 Indian stalwarts of commentary and the media in India. There's a couple other potential ones which I'm not going to talk about just yet that are coming up. I'm being hit at by a lot of different people, so we'll see how we go. A number of Australians, a couple of West Indians. We'll get some historic people, as in legends, coming back into the fray to talk about games in the future. So thanks, Chris, for your time today. Once again, brilliant. Again, your job to get that list down. Yep. Everyone else, all viewers, as you heard us say, on Twitter and or the YouTube video feedback area, provide us with feedback on the numbers 9, 10, and 11, the batting order, or bowling order for that matter. Feedback on the first 8 that are there.
Yeah.
Also,
absolutely.
Any of the IPL discussions that you want to bring up regarding what we've talked about today. And other aspects of the India England series as well, and some of the BBL. Okay, there's one point you haven't talked. The BBL. What were you going to talk about? The BBL.
Yeah, I had a question, and let me just make sure I get his name right, from Joy Lod, who commented, said he found our discussion on the 100 interesting, and the T10. There's obviously a T10 tournament about it being gimmicky. He just, and we'll touch on it briefly, he just wanted to know what our thoughts were on the new rules that the Big Bash brought in this year. And obviously, you've got some strong views on that, I think, from what you've suggested to me.
Yeah. I'm not in favour of any of the new rules, to be really honest with you. I think they're making rules for the sake of new rules.
So there are three, aren't there? There's the X Factor where you can sub in and sub out. There's
I'm dead against
point
that.
10 leading runs, who most runs after the 10, and there's one more, isn't there?
I can't remember the third offhand. What's the third?
Oh, it's the shorter power play. You can pick your power play.
That gets utterly confusing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it gets utterly confusing. How are the crowd going to be aware of that? I know there'll be signalling going on, but it's difficult enough with power plays and how they conduct themselves. I'm not sure what they're trying to do. They're twisting and turning this far too much, and I think Joy was it? He's the fellow that he brought that point. Yeah. The reality is that I'm in agreement with no more changes, and I'm bewildered, especially this power play reduction. I don't get it, and I'm sorry, I'm not for it at all. It loses me a little bit. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that the X Factor where you can sub in a player is just stupid. Honestly, I think it's ridiculous. The other two, obviously, they had in one-day cricket, they had you could pick your 5-over power play, and we played it in league cricket over here for a bit. I don't mind it. I think in 2020, it's just, as you said, it's just confusing. I think that T20, the beauty of it and why the Big Bash was so good, and arguably, along with the IPL, the best franchise tournament in the world, is that it's just quite simple. It was just, there was nothing confusing about it. 6 sides, 8 sides, go in, just try and whack it, and that was it. I don't mind the leading runs after the first 10 overs. I think that's not the worst, and it just keeps more teams interested in it for longer. I think it's designed as a tactical thing.
But are they asking the public for their opinion about this before they bring them in, or not? That's all
I didn't think that. I mean, obviously I'm not in Australia, so I don't.
No, well, there was no real open for discussion process with it, and I dare say that most of the crowds would say no to these. But
yeah,
anyway, I don't get it. I'm afraid I'm not with it. I think it's what happens if it doesn't work. You go back to the original conditions, which only has another level of confusion. Anyway, I'm not for it.
No, I agree.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Please view, like, and share the posts. Provide us enormous amounts of feedback, commentary, discussion points, questioning. As I said, the likes of Nilakshi Sharma will be one of our first guests from Assam. I want you to all, if you're from different states of India, whether it's Gujarat, Maharashtra, Assam, the Bengali area, we'll go through them all, and we'll try to pick people that can come on for a guest few minutes on our show in future episodes. That's exciting, and you may feel that a part of the show even more. I'd like to say that, please, feedback, commentary. Twitter's the #1 way we'd like you to do it, but YouTube's also very good. And again, Twitter handles at Norm Koch and at Vern158. All right, everyone, thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Chris, once again. Brilliant as it always is. Keep that board going behind you. All the best, guys.
Cheers.